Assalamu alaikum, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Perceptive Learning Zone, and I'm your host, mentor, Hamza Nasser. And today we are going to be talking more about this higher education illusion that is prevailing in Pakistan and try to deconstruct Pakistan's predatory university crisis based on my experience of talking to fellow academics and observing the culture, having taught in mainstream university myself for 2 years. So first of all, what I'll say is that the modern educational landscape in Pakistan, it is increasingly dominated by institutional marketing that prioritizes superficial visual appeal over academic excellence and research infrastructure. Now, high-spending private universities, they leverage hyper-stylized social media content, high-production promotional videos, and grand announcements of star-studded musical concerts in order to construct an illusion of a vibrant, world-class university life, right? The calculated strategy, it deliberately targets the emotional desires of young matric, intermediate, and O-level students who long for personal independence, status, as well as engaging a social circle after years of rigid conventional schooling. Now, unfortunately, I must say over here, as backed by the recent increase in mental health issues and suicides prevailing all over university campuses, this heavy emphasis on recreational events, the aesthetic campus architectures and this lifestyle positioning, it serves as a a smoke screen that is designed to mask some severe systemic defects. And this shifts, I feel like it shifts the focus away from the actual metrics that define a very valuable tertiary education. Now, when an institute it allocates a disproportionate amount of its, a share of its operational capital to so-called celebrity performances, high-profile fashion shows and aggressive billboard campaigns, rather than upgrading the laboratories, the engineering workshops, and the computing clusters. So it ceases to function as a genuine house of knowledge, and it shifts instead into a commercial enterprise that is selling a temporary delusional lifestyle. Now, independent financial audits, right, of tier 3, and don't think for a second that I'm sitting here in Lahore right now as we speak just venting off at the bureaucrats and stuff. Wallahi, this is these are genuine, heartfelt observations, objectively speaking, that I'm trying to share with you, my dear viewers, in this episode. Right now, independent financial audits of tier 3 private universities, they reveal a deliberate commercial strategy. Now, they use high production lifestyle events to generate student enrollment, and in the process, now what they're doing is they are effectively replacing academic merit with consumer marketing. And a single branch or campus of a commercialized private institute, if you talk about the stats, they roughly spend between PKR 3.5 million to PKR 7.5 million on an individual music gala or social festival, right? This includes artist booking fee for the mainstream pop performers, which range from PKR 1.5 million to over PKR 4 million per act, professional grade audiovisual line arrays, truss rigging, as well as private security details. So next up, let's talk about the economics of predatory admissions. How is this unregulated third tier capitalizing on student overflow? So every single academic cycle in Pakistan, you have more than 4 lakh intermediate and matric and O-level students who are facing a brutal numbers game, right? You have premier state institutions like UET, NUST, FAST, Punjab University, ComSat, Slums, GK, right, which are accepting only a slim fraction of the top tier applicants based on, I would say, strict aggregate merit thresholds, frequently exceeding 80 to 85%. So a massive structural overflow of students is basically left stranded in no man's land. Now, it is precisely within this, I would say, supply-demand gap that the business model of unregulated private universities it thrives. So, I would say beneath the premier tier of established, highly competitive national universities lies this sprawling network of unregulated or poorly monitored private institutions, often classified as fazool or worthless universities. These entities now, they actively weaponize zero merit entry policies, accept students with low intermediate scores, even the ones who are barely sitting at 45 or 50%, who are basically just, I shall say, fellas, they are desperate for a university label, essentially offering guaranteed admissions to anyone capable of financing the exorbitant fees, right? ऐसे नहीं वो कहते कि जिन्हों के थोड़ा एडमिशन लगे हो सुपीरियर जानता है और जो हालात हैं करीब बाकी यूनिवर्सिटी के ऊपर भी यही टैग लगने वाले. Now what's the structural failure? Ladies and gentlemen, the structural failure now, it lies in the core operational metrics of these institutions. They deliberately scale up the enrollment while freezing investment in actual instructional capital. And according to insights that were popularized by student advocacy channels like Padhaku Bacha on YouTube, while recognized accreditation frameworks require a student to teacher ratio of roughly 30 to 1 or 40 to 1 for engineering and computing programs, these predatory private universities, they roughly pack 90 to 110 or even 95 to 115 students within a single section classroom, right? My 2 years in GK, I have multiple times taught classes or north of 80 students, 90 students, right? So now, subhanAllah, these classes, they feel less like classes and they feel more like, those jalsas, those election rallies, right? Now, this maximizes, what's the typical bureaucratic mentality, right? This maximizes tuition revenue per lecture hour without adding full-time faculty overhead. To maintain high profit margins, these institutions, they keep full-time PhD qualified faculty at a minimum, and instead up to 65 to 75% of the core curriculum is taught by part-time visiting instructors or fellows with fresh master's degrees who are paid as little as PKR 1,000 to 2,000 rupees per lecture hour. And this offers, as a result, I feel like they offer zero long-term academic mentorship or research guidance outside of class hours, right? So this hyper commercialization now, I feel like it allows the corporate owners of these colleges to yield immense profits. Semester fees at these mid-tier private entities, they fluctuate between PKR 1.5 lakh to 3.5 lakh, meaning that a full 4-year degree program, it drains anywhere from 12 lakh to over 25 lakh rupees from single middle class family, right? And these universities, they essentially act as a high marginal real estate corporation rather than as an academic house of learning. The defining characteristic of these colleges is a complete absence of a functional placement bureau and industry-aligned curriculum or recognizable academic credibility. They function essentially as credential mills, issuing diplomas that hold virtually zero equity when scrutinized by recruiters at major multinational corporations or local industrial conglomerates or international graduate school admission committees, right? Now, you gotta think, right? You gotta put yourself in the student's position. A person who is spending 4 critical development years within these hollow structures, ladies and gentlemen, which results not only in a severe financial drain on their family, but also leads directly to acute unemployment or total unemployability, as the labor market quickly identifies these specific degrees as empty pieces of paper, toilet trash that lacks any corresponding technical competency, right? Also, next up, I think we need to talk about, the hidden costs of these unaccredited degrees, right? I would say that, like I said before, these programs are, exceptionally lucrative for universities to run because they require minimal overhead. Like I'm talking about private sector universities that continue to mass produce graduates in standard business administration, the BBA stream, or conventional social sciences or non-accredited information technology variants, and lower tier engineering disciplines without any regard for actual industry supply and demand dynamics, right? So what I feel is that, these setups, they don't really require any expensive heavy laboratory machinery or complex experimental setups. All they require is standard classrooms, whiteboards, and part-time instructors. So students as well as their parents, they frequently fall into this trap due to generational inertia that is erroneously believing that traditional titles naturally guarantee financial stability, where the truth could not be more polar opposite from this school of thought. Now, a primary example of this institutional exploitation, it's up to me. You can think of me as a whistleblower or someone who is dishing out enlightenment and common sense that was due like a couple of decades ago for this country. But a private example of this institutional exploitation, it can be seen in the unchecked proliferation of computing and engineering programs that completely lack statutory approval. The Higher Education Committee, alongside professional regulatory bodies like PC, the Pakistan Engineering Council, or the NSAC, that is the National Computer Education Accreditation Council, they maintain public registries of zero scope and unaccredited programs, yet thousands of students are actively misled into enrolling in them. So when a private university enrolls 500 students into a newly minted unaccredited program like BS Artificial Intelligence or BS Cybersecurity without securing the NSAC approval, those students are left entirely vulnerable, right? Upon graduation, they find themselves legally barred from applying for specialized public sector jobs. They are taking comparative centralized exams or securing credential evaluations for migration or foreign master's programs. So you see, the domestic market, let's be honest, fellas, it is already suffocated by a staggering surplus of thousands of graduates who are possessing identical, highly theoretical skill sets, driving starting wages down to levels that fail to cover basic inflation or yield any reasonable return on the initial education investment. So fresh graduates from these unaccredited saturated programs, they're offered entry-level salaries as low as PKR 25,000 to PKR 35,000 per month, right? I mean, I remember having an O-level background, a bachelor's in chemical engineering from GK and a master's in advanced chemical engineering from Strathclyde. In 2024, I was offered a job at an academy for O-level maths and physics for, guess what, 30,000 rupees per month. उस पैसे में obviously मैंने CEO की बकबक भी बर्दाश्त करनी थी, स्टूडेंट्स के नखरे भी उठाने थे, पेरेंट्स की डिमांड्स को भी पूरा करना था, right? So, and what's 30K, especially in a city like Lahore where I'm sitting right now, like it's peanuts. It doesn't even meet your pocket money, right? बाकी चीज़ों को तो आप बिल्कुल भूल ही जाएं. So, these figures, they completely fail to provide a reasonable return on an initial educational investment of over 2 million rupees. So, this profound mismatch between obsolete academic curricula and the highly technical, skill-driven demands of the global digital economy, it turns the pursuit of these conventional degrees into a very, very risky economic gamble. And then let's talk about this entertainment illusion, right? To divert students away from these structural and academic deficiencies, predatory private institutions have systematically engineered a campus culture that is centered entirely around superficial consumerism, entertainment, and a very commercialized entertainment monopoly. A primary marketing indicator for these colleges is no longer their research impact factor. It's no longer their patent filings. It's no longer their placement ratios. It's no longer their graduate alumni success rates, but rather it is the, subhanAllah, it is the star power of the musical artists that they book for campus concerts and the scale of their social galas, right? How well they can effectively conjure in these stooges of Satan, these servants of the Dajjal, who are playing a Herculean role in singing themselves as well as their audience into the depths of hellfire, right? And operational budgets within these universities, it reveals a staggering misallocation of capital that directly compromises educational quality. And I would say that institutional marketing budgets, they are heavily skewed, and a single private university will routinely spend PKR 30 lakh to 70 lakh on a single concert, paying massive premiums to these pop icons, as said before, right? And that's obviously that I saw for myself in my 2 years in GK, right? Student को कोई होश नहीं है, उसने क्लास में आना है, रजिस्टर के साथ उसने पढ़ना है, उसने अपने स्किल सेट्स पे काम करनी है, बस एक ही टॉक होती थी हर हफ्ते के फलाना आ रहा है, वो गाने कोई फलाना आ रहा है, वो बैंड बजाने, right? So that's all that there is to it, right? So in stark contrast to these multi-million rupee entertainment budgets, the annual non-salary operational budget for department research consumables, laboratory consumables, lab equipment maintenance, and chemical or electronic supplies, it is frequently capped at less than PKR 5 lakh or PKR 10 lakh, which drops below or it's omitted entirely. So while a university, I would say, management team will immediately, without thinking twice, authorize millions of rupees for multi-day cultural events, these likes of these all packs, right? They systematically deny institutional funding for international scientific database subscriptions, annual access to premium research repositories like IEEE Explore or Springer Link, which cost between PKR 8 lakh to PKR 2 million per department, if I'm not mistaken. This is completely missing from these institutions entirely, almost. So students are therefore, they're left with no choice but to rely on open access alternatives or pirated networks in order to conduct the technical research, in order to read current scientific literature, because their own university is refusing to fund academic infrastructure. And the commercial calculus, I feel, ladies and gentlemen, it is very simple. A glitzy, high production musical gala or an automotive exhibition that is shared across social networks will immediately attract thousands of new impressionable matric and intermediate applicants, whereas an investment in the state-of-the-art computing cluster or a chemical engineering mass transfer unit, it yields no immediate marketing return. Right? So yeah, as a result, subhanAllah, you got these campuses which look less like university campuses and more like event management venues, right? Where the student body is treated primarily as a captive consumer base for corporate sponsorships and entertainment ticket sales, right? For example, in my where I worked, right, I remember there was a massive crisis in the computer department in terms of faculty, yet all they were concerned about was hackathons and these what shall I say, these boot camps and these so-called seminars and stuff. I remember one time computers का एक कोई event था, उन्होंने गाड़ी खड़ी की हुई थी academic block के बाहर, तो मैं उस दिन अपने ऑफिस में जा रहा था, तो वो साहब मिलते हैं, कहते हैं वो जो गाड़ी की निगरानी कर रहे थे कि सर सुबह से इन्होंने मुझे कपड़ा नहीं दिया गाड़ी साफ करने के लिए, तो आपके पास कोई कपड़ा है तो वो प्लीज मुझे गाड़ी से निकाल के दे दें, right? So that's what it is, fellas, right? So let's, on a serious note, let's talk about the cultural cost of de-intellectualization. Now, the long-term consensus of this pervasive entertainment focus is the systematic de-intellectualization of the student body, resulting in a distinct campus culture where academic achievement is actively marginalized, and a strong disparity emerges between student engagement in extracurricular festivities and their dedication to genuine intellectual development. During my 2 years in GK, I remember I conducted an array of workshops on topics like MS Office, usage of AI tools, financial literacy, foreign education consultancy, right, and sending emails to all the undergrad batches of what, like over 2,000 students. There were like what, maximum 10, 12 students in like every workshop, right? I can provide you the stats if you want. So yeah, I mean, that's the interest, right? So the prevailing campus culture, it actively fosters an environment where organizing social galas and managing these societies, they are treated as far greater milestones than achieving academic milestones or conducting original empirical, I would say, research, right? And Also, I feel ultimately it's all about these distractions, because there's that bread and circus analogy that when the when the Roman Empire was falling, they used to have endless gladiator contests and chariot races in the arenas just to keep the mass occupied and to prevent them from reflecting on the problems governing, which ultimately led to the collapse of the Roman Empire. So we replaced those gladiator arenas with these modern day concerts, and I think you got the same thing, right? So consequently, students are coddled through a superficial learning process that is characterized by rote memorization, the outdated lecture slides, and unoriginal plagiarized projects. Now, this artificial padding, it insulates individuals from the actual rigor, from the failure metrics and high accountability standards that the professional world demands. So, by the time graduation arrives, this pervasive anti-intellectual and entertainment culture, it leaves individuals entirely unaccustomed to analytical problem solving, critical thinking, technical evaluation, or rigorous professional accountability. And therefore, they are completely unprepared for the uncompromising demands of the highly competitive corporate world or competitive global research environments. अभी जीकी के एक फाइनल ईयर केमिकल इंजीनियरिंग स्टूडेंट मुझे रीच आउट करते हैं, अभी कॉन्वोकेशन नहीं हुई, इसमें ख्याल से अभी इट्स ड्यू ऑन द 30th, राइट? सो वो कहते हैं कि जनाब मैं CSS का सोच रहा हूँ, तो आप मुझे काइंडली इस चीज़ के ऊपर गाइड कर दें. अभी से ये हालात हैं कि वो साहब जो है CSS की तरफ जो है वो ट्रांजिशन कर रहे हैं, राइट? सो corporate recruiters and engineering executives, they routinely report that applicants from these highly commercialized private universities, they fail miserably, basic entry assessments within the first 10 minutes of an interview because their 4 years of higher education, it focused entirely on organizing these recreational galas rather than acquiring marketable, future-proof technical skills, right? So the ultimate tragedy of Pakistan's private higher education system, I feel, is the profound structural disconnect between obsolete university curricula and the technical demands of the global digital economy, right? So a comprehensive review of the course outline, it reveals an alarming trend that over 70% of the software engineering, computing, and business curricula, they rely on textbooks and tech stacks that are over a decade old. And students enrolling in these information technology programs, they are still being taught outdated software methodologies and legacy programming frameworks, which completely bypass modern industry requirements like cloud native architecture, advanced DevOps pipelines, scalable microservices, and practical machine learning deployment, right? And the structural, I would say the structural cost of this disconnect, it is verified by the staggering unemployment statistics within the local tech and corporate sectors, right? That's, today I'm trying to give you as much stats as possible so you won't say, Mentor Saab is just shooting arrows in midair, which is why today's video is going to be a touch long, so please bear with me. So these industry reports, they roughly indicate that out of the 20,000 to 25,000 IT and software engineering graduates being produced annually in Pakistan, less than 10 to 15% are deemed employable by software houses and tech companies. The remaining 85%, they lack fundamental competencies in version control. I'm talking clean code architecture, data structures, and practical software design patterns. So software house CEOs and industry recruiters, now they frequently report that applicants from heavily marketed private universities, they fail basic technical assessment tests during the interview stage, and therefore I would say ये बहुत बड़ी खतरे की घंटी हम सब के लिए. So let's talk about the macroeconomics of this crisis, right? The foundational, I would say, promise of higher education in Pakistan, it has completely collapsed under the weight of institutional failure. According to extensive research that was published by PIDE, that is Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, the unemployment rate for university degree holders across the nation, it stands at nearly 3 times the national average, fluctuating between 21% and 31% depending obviously on the provincial demographic. This creates a deeply troubling paradox where an individual is statistically more likely to remain unemployed with a formal tertiary degree than without one. And obviously, when disaggregated by academic discipline, the data exposes an even more alarming crisis in sectors which were traditionally viewed as secure pathways to prosperity. The graduate unemployment rate for engineers like me has skyrocketed to an unprecedented 23.5%. This epidemic is fueled by an uncontrolled supply urge. The country now hosts over 200 recognized universities, which are turning out hundreds of thousands of graduates annually into an economic ecosystem that is completely incapable of absorbing them. And the HEC finally, surprise, surprise, has itself acknowledged that fewer than one in five postgraduate students, they complete any structured market-aligned internship prior to graduation. This confirms a devastating structural mismatch where universities operate as purely commercial real estate organizations, generating massive volumes of certificates while failing to cultivate any viable market-ready professional talent. Now, at this point, you say, is this really a surprise? Or were the alarm bells going off quite a while ago? Was there any whistleblower who tried to warn us? And the answer is yes, we were given those warnings over a passage of time, but we just chose to, hear and not listen, right? Renowned public intellectuals and academics have long sounded the alarm on this systemic decay, pointing out that the root of crisis is not merely a lack of textbook updates, but a fundamental war on intellectual curiosity. Now, Dr. Pervez Hoodboy is a leading physicist and a vocal critic of the domestic educational structure. He has frequently highlighted the profound correlation between formal qualifications and absolute subject incompetence within university faculties. He has noted that the prevailing higher education matrix, it fails to evaluate whether an instructor can independently solve foundational analytical problems, hence leaving students in the hands of educators who rely entirely on outdated lecture slides. Dr. Hoodboy argues that the core crisis is the urgent need to transform how students think, question, and learn rather than continuously rewriting curricula to serve political or administrative whims. When a system prioritizes standard compliance and passive listening over critical thinking, basically you are systemically devaluing the human mind. Yeah. Similarly, research from PIDE and various think tanks, it underscores that the average university environment, it actively penalizes independent thought. इसके ऊपर हमने पहले भी बात की, if you checked out my previous video on the devil's curriculum, how education lost its soul, right? The education system of ours, it pushes students towards memorization matrices that make them entirely uncompetitive on global research indexes. This institutional culture, it replaces deep cognitive development with a superficial metric tracking, which means that a first author paper or a high GPA, it rarely reflects actual technical competency or original problem solving capacity, right? हमारे यहाँ जो है ये CLO, PLO और रिसर्च का जो फ्रॉड है वो ख़त्म होने का नाम नहीं ले रहा. There has been, look, I always say, when you talk about an academic, right, a teacher, right, he needs to have an ontological stance. What is an ontological stance? In which he defines what brand or genre of knowledge he's trying to seek. And then you have the epistemological stance where you say, okay, this is my game plan for seeking this particular genre of knowledge. And then you have your social plan in which you establish linkages between individuals and, I would say, social structures, right? Majority of our academics, they are bereft of these ontological stances, these epistemological stances, these social stances. They have virtually no role in policy making. Their communication skills are very poor. Their understanding of social aspects is sparse to negligible. And when asked about giving solutions to overcome this conundrum, they will just keep on blaming the system, or they will just keep on quoting Iqbal out of context, right? I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, like there were, I would say, 600 or 800 academics, gifted academics who left Pakistan in the year 2022, right? It's an approximate figure. Just imagine how much that number has accentuated. So एक यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पेंसिल्वेनिया डिपार्टमेंट के प्रोफेसर कहते हैं कि एन A grade academic can lift a B grade student to an A grade level, whereas a B grade academic can pull an A grade student down to a C grade level. So obviously when A grade academics leave the country, then you got the B graders and the C graders left behind, and that is going to be a problem. And also what I feel is like ultimately the departmental heads, there's a massive degree of responsibility on their shoulders, right? They have to be men who prioritize academia first, and then ye jo sari commercial showbazi hai, they put that in the back burner, right? Instead, like my 2 years of experience in GK can best be summarized in this way, whenever there was a conference or there was some seminar or symposium in the auditorium, or कोई industrial visit लेके जाना था, या बाहर से मर्दान कॉलेज से कोई बच्चे आ रहे थे जीकी को टूर करने के लिए, the first thing that would be sacrificed would be the class, right? And I remember that golden era that GK produced, especially prior to COVID, the very first priority used to be the class. So we have gone from making class our first priority to making class our last priority, right? ये वही है कि अल्लाह जिसको हिदायत दे, राइट? जिस बंदे को अपनी चापलूसी से, अपनी फारशीपन से, अपनी चमचागिरी से फुर्सत मिले कि वो रियलाइज करे कि देयर इज अ न्यू जनरेशन दैट इज इन डेस्परेट नीड ऑफ mentorship, and that's been our dilemma. You've had rigid, insipid men who have been sitting in their ivory towers, in their lofty mansions, more content to reflect over these so-called rankings, more content with the accolades of the past batches rather than realizing there's a need to nurture the new generation, more content on basking in past glory than understanding the need to make the most out of the present situation. And no surprises, the rule of our nation has passed on to lesser men who were not fit to lead, who were not fit to see the big picture, right? So there's a profound lack of parent-teacher meetings, right? एंड वही बात आती है कि अल्टीमेटली हमें लगता है कि बस रिसर्च पेपर के बाढ़ लगाने से कोई मुआवजा हो जाना है. मुआवजा ऐसे नहीं होगा. सबसे पहले आपको अपने माइंडसेट को तब्दील करने की जरूरत है. सो दिस इज so having worked in university myself, right, this is an important message that I'm giving to all the, I would say, to all the corrupt administrators who are, to all the corrupt university administrators who are watching this video, to all these, these corrupt bureaucrats who are hell-bent on destroying our academia and who have already destroyed academia to an extent, right? And I would say, wake up, right? You pack of rascals, right? You degenerate scumbags, right? Yeah, filthy goons, right? I mean, get your head out of your backside and realize that teaching is the path of the prophets. A teacher is a role model. He is a spiritual father. He is a mentor, and you need to empower him, right? Rather than making him a stooge of the system who is just meant to log your bullshit Excel files day in and day out, right? So get your head straight and stop hobbling around like some crooked peacock with a baseball stuck up its backside, right? And stop running, right? I would say to you, rascals and loonies, right? Stop running these universities like your fucking family business. Apologies for my language, right? Get your act together, right? And if you don't have that flair in you, if you don't have that passion in you, if you don't have that desire to, play a transformational part in uplifting the next generation, then please, man, just crawl back into the hole that you came out of, and do yourself a favor, do us a favor, just resign. I'm pretty sure you have enough money to finance your, post-retirement stay in France or Saudi Arab. And अगर आप नहीं सगे बच्चों के साथ तो बड़ा मेहरबानी आप एकेडेमिया में तशरीफ मत लाएं. So that being said and done, let's talk about the audit paradigm, right? Dismantling, what are the solutions? So far you'd be like, okay, Mr. Nasser, there's been a lot of negativity from your side in like the past half hour. What's the way forward, right? So I would say that dismantling this predatory educational facade, it requires a radical data-driven shift in how students, parents, and industry stakeholders, they evaluate institutional growth and create a vital blueprint for the student autonomy. The value of a university cannot be measured by the size of its real estate footprint, the architectural elegance or beauty of a campus plaza, or the celebrity status of a musical artist that it books for its social calendars, or for that matter, the ubiquity of its citywide marketing campaigns. True educational equity and quality are tracked solely through verified, unalterable indicators of substance that directly correlate with real-world skill acquisition, long-term career resilience, and genuine global mobility, right? First of all, I would say that what's the first solution? The first solution is verified HEC and professional council accreditation. Students must manually cross-reference and verify that the specific target degree program, not just the university at large, holds active unconditional accreditation and approval with statutory professional regulatory bodies like the PC or the NSAC by reviewing their public real-time registries, number one. Number two, the full-time PhD qualified faculty to student ratio, it must be audited within the department to ensure that our classes are being led by active research scholars who are actively engaged in research rather than relying on underpaid transient visiting instructors who are rushed through lecture queues just to clear out the schedules. Number three, aspiring students should completely bypass the university's marketing material, and instead they should utilize professional networks like LinkedIn to independently map and lock up the annual career trajectories and employment history of the department's recent graduates. If the data shows that the vast majority of recent alumni from a specific program are underemployed, they're working in unrelated low tier roles, or they're struggling to find a placement within 6 to 12 months after graduation, then the program must be immediately and unequivocally classified as a high risk financial liability. And also, I would say a genuine house of knowledge needs to invest its core capital into cutting edge computational labs, extensive physical and digital research libraries, and robust active corporate liaison offices that secure mandatory high quality internships for student body. And for that, I would say the administration needs to be a good listener, right? There's that saying in life that's, I read this in that book called, Your Sacred Self by Wayne Dyer, that, silence, right, it is the general consecration of the universe and the invisible laying upon of a divine pontiff's hands upon the rest of the world. Even Rumi said that silence is the language of God. Everything else is poor translation, right? So there needs to be better listening, right? Universities need to stop, singling out and targeting, vocal people, right, who are passionate about identifying areas for improvement and critical reform in the university, right? ये जो कल्चर है कि कोई भी बंदा जरा सा कोई बात बोले तो या तो उसका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ना रिन्यू किया जाए या उसको इतनी उसकी मत मारी जाए कि वो तंग आके खुद ही रिजाइन कर दे. This symbolic culture, it needs to end ASAP, right? I remember like a year ago I made because the QEC fellas, the quality enhancement cell, they used to come to our department every semester saying कि जनाब 10 इस यूनिवर्सिटी में तो अनु की लग रहा है की मसला है. So what I did was like I mapped out like different domains in the university: technical, non-technical, student related, finance related, ranking metrics related, alumni stuff, and I systematically documented it in an 8,500 word QEC report, which I sent for them to examine and allocate resources to overcome those conundrums. And believe it or not, like मैं यूनिवर्सिटी छोड़ के वापस लाहौर आ गया हूँ, अभी तक किसी भी साहब ने उस डिपार्टमेंट से मुझे रीच आउट नहीं किया टू रिफ्लेक्ट ऑन द शॉर्टकमिंग्स सिस्टमिकली मेंशन इन दैट रिपोर्ट, राइट? सो वही बात आती है कि वी नीड पीपल हु आर पैशनेट, who are driven, right, who are role models for the upcoming generation. Because it's very easy to pin all the problems of Pakistan on Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right? But the truth is, you could have done much better in terms of parenting them, in terms of teaching them, in terms of becoming an inspiration for them, right? There are no bad students ultimately, there are only bad teachers. I think it's that Chinese or that Japanese thing. So you're pretty much complicit, men like us in creating this ruckus that we see I would say in front of us, right? So understand that the Gen Z, if it's a mess, it's a main reason is because it did not get good mentors and listeners and support figures in life. So try to be that support figure for them. Try to uplift them by leading by example, not by blind preaching. Trust me, man, they're done with blind preaching, right? Work on their technical prowess, okay? Give them the latest knowledge that's relevant to the industry, the professional world, okay? Help them with their research profiling, with building their networks, with their internships, okay? Help them with your jobs, right? Work on their, I shall say, their soft skills, give them skill sets, other skill sets, I don't know, like digital marketing, e-commerce, game development, web development, app development, okay? Make leaders out of them, okay? Because ultimately when these fellas go outside and they compete on a national or global platform and they do well, it's ultimately your reputation, it's ultimately your prestige, it is ultimately your, I would say, reputation enhancement, okay? So act local, but think global, right? So by prioritizing these foundational academic metrics over commercialized lifestyle gimmicks, students can protect their professional futures, they can bypass the exploitative machinery of the education mafia, and they can ensure that their financial investments translate into genuine intellectual growth and global professional competence. And for any student out there who's feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on, right, you're most welcome to reach out to me in the comment box, okay? We can sync up on through email or through Zoom, and I would love to do your career counseling, at a nominal price, in a way that, you turn out to be fine in the long run, God willing, right? So that'll be all for now, fellas. Thank you very much for being such patient listeners and bearing with me in this lengthy, tedious session. And I'm your host, mentor Hamza Nasir. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Perceptive Learning Zone, and we'll be back in the coming period with more content, God willing. Till then, keep rocking. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.